It is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Friday in January 2025, our first podcast of the new year. We got a lot to talk about on today's episode. We're going to break down the Ravens' 9 Pro Bowl selections, maybe some guys that should have been named to that Pro Bowl, as ridiculous as it may sound. The Ravens could have had double-digit Pro Bowlers. We'll also preview tomorrow's matchup between the Ravens and the Browns, the regular season finale, as they turn the page and head towards the postseason, what that matchup means, and so much, much more. But first, Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress, and with a superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more.
Don't miss the 2025 CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament in Baltimore, February 25th to March 1st at CFG Bank Arena. Watch HBCU teams battle to be crowned champion. Check out the free fan fest and performances at the Baltimore Convention Center. Enjoy downtown's top restaurants and stay in one of our amazing hotels. The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament. You want to be here.
Now, Jonas, the reason that we are podcasting on a Friday and we are also not in person is because, once again, for the second time in 3 weeks, I'm ill. I'm sick. I don't know what's going around. The Ravens seem to have it too, because my word of the day is illness. The definition is poor health, sickness, first recorded in 1490 to 1500. It's a combination of ill plus ness. A bunch of Ravens appeared on the practice report as having illness this week. Hopefully a lot of those guys are going to be better. We'll get into the injury report. But Jonas, I'm sick. You can hear it in my voice. And a good thing you're not sitting next to me, because I would be shedding this virus or bacterial infection upon you.
I thought you were going to lead off by talking about how you went and saw Nosferatu, and then I would have made a joke about how you went and saw Nosferatu and you came back with a Nosferatu flu. But alas, we're going to have to pretend like that.
I mean, I did. I was starting to feel the symptoms then. And a big theme of the movie is plague. So maybe I was just sensing the themes of the movie Nosferatu, which, by the way, has the actor that plays Kraven the Hunter in it. And one of his lines in the movie is, "I must hunt." So basically, I saw the favorite movie of the Banner Ravens podcast, which is Kraven the Hunter. It's our favorite movie, and yet we've never seen it. But essentially, I saw Kraven the Hunter by seeing Nosferatu, which was an outstanding film, by the way.
I mean, there are a lot of movies that I think you and I have never seen, but we kind of feel that we have, just because they've been like so atomized that they exist somewhere in our bloodstream. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's some Spider-Man movies that I've never seen that I basically feel like I know because they've made it. For a while, I hadn't seen The Big Lebowski, and like that was just so memed and all over the internet that I basically knew it. And obviously, I've seen it a couple times now. But there maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just Kraven the Hunter is our new Big Lebowski, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, basically, we can reference it endlessly without ever having to see it. And Justin Tucker, until he misses a field goal attempt or an extra point, he's got that streak going. Hasn't missed since Kraven the Hunter came out. All right, Jonas, let's get into our Who's Got It Better Than award. It's an award we created mere weeks ago on the Banner Ravens podcast, and it's the player, coach, executive, or multiple who is basically living their best lives right now. And this goes to the 9 Ravens Pro Bowlers. Last year, they had 7. This year, they have 9. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, running back Derrick Henry, wide receiver Zay Flowers, fullback Patrick Ricard, defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike, linebacker Roquan Smith, cornerback Marlon Humphrey, safety Kyle Hamilton, and center Tyler Linderbaum all made it to the Pro Bowl roster. An absolutely stacked class of Ravens.
It's weird that this team is not as good record-wise as last year's, but here they are with 2 more Pro Bowl picks. I think obviously some of this is maybe some inertia from last year, and certain guys getting in based on reputation or maybe just a weak year at their respective position in the AFC. Obviously, someone like Nnamdi Madubuike was probably right on that borderline. Pat Ricard, it's always a bit of a question mark how they handle the fullback position because it's just one guy. Zay Flowers, again, some pushback about how that should have gone to Brian Thomas after the incredible year that he's had as a rookie for the Jaguars. But, Zay's been up there at the top of the AFC in receiving yards basically all season long. And then, you could quibble with someone like Kyle Van Noy, who's top 5 in sacks, not getting not even a starting position, but not even making the Pro Bowl team at all. He's an alternate instead of one of those 9 selections. So it's always a bit of a joke how this process is conducted. I mean, the fact that they announced the Pro Bowl selections before the end of the season, the Pro Bowl voting is done in like this very compressed window where it really favors certain guys on certain hot streaks than other guys. I mean, the fact that Jaden Daniels finished with more votes than Lamar Jackson, like among the fans, is just kind of ridiculous, even though they've both had incredible seasons. One of these guys is going to be, probably top 2 in MVP voting, and the other one is going to be only, offensive rookie of the year, if he can hold off Brock Bowers. So it's a fun little diversion, but I think obviously the more weighty accomplishment is all pro, and then just kind of seeing how all the alternates shake out is always interesting as well.
Yeah, the Ravens also end up with 7 alternates: Ronnie Stanley, Kyle Van Noy, as you mentioned, Mark Andrews, Daniel Falele, Chris Board as a special teamer, Nick Moore, and Justin Tucker. I have a hard time getting up and fired up about guys not making the Pro Bowl or guys making the Pro Bowl who shouldn't have, because like you said, it's an inexact science. It's a combination of fan voting and player voting and coaching voting, and it's just not exactly a great way to determine who the best players are. A lot of it comes down to reputation. I mean, Roquan Smith right now not having his best season. PFF has him as the 51st ranked inside linebacker, and yet he's a Pro Bowl starter. Last year, absolutely deserving to be an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl starter, but this year has taken a slight step back. Justin Tucker, we've chronicled all of his problems this year, and he's a Pro Bowl alternate. I mean, I think it's great for them personally that get named to the Pro Bowl or as an alternate. It stinks for Ronnie Stanley because he could have made a whole lot more money. What was it? $8 million in incentives if he had been named to the original Pro Bowl roster instead of being named an alternate. So personally, it often means a lot to these guys. And I think it's great for Daniel Falele that he was also named a Pro Bowl alternate. That doesn't change the fact that he's had just kind of a so-so season at guard. I think it's awesome that these guys made it, but I just don't. It doesn't change my evaluation of who they are as a player. The ultimate example is Tyler Huntley making the Pro Bowl. It's like it's not a complete joke, but it's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, that this adds to the pressure for the Ravens because the headline for Pro Bowl announcement day was Ravens lead NFL with 9 selections. The 3rd seeded Ravens, the Ravens who lost to the Browns, the Ravens who lost to the Raiders. That's the most talented team in football, and according to the Pro Bowl voting, it is. I guess in addition to the Ronnie Stanley incentive ramifications, it probably won't matter in the long run because I think the Ravens will do whatever they can to get Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum locked down. But because those 2 guys have those 5th-year options that I think have to be exercised after this season, because they are now 2-time Pro Bowl selections, the value of that 5th-year option kicks basically into the highest kind of elevator clause. So those guys just got themselves a nice raise. It probably won't really matter in the long run because assuming that, the Ravens take care of business, lock those guys down long term, then, that 5th-year option money will just kind of get lost in the sauce of whatever deal that those guys ultimately sign. But it's notable just for kind of as we play this, off-season budget free agent game, just what it might mean for a couple of years down the road. It's always it would have been really interesting to see, how the Ravens would have handled the Ronnie Stanley situation. Obviously, that would have counted on next year's cap instead of this year's cap because it was not likely to be earned by the definition of the contract. But the fact that he's played so well, the fact that he was this close to making the Pro Bowl roster, the fact that Roger Rosengarten has really settled into that right tackle position, and I don't think there's a huge distinction between left tackle and right tackle now in the NFL in terms of like the quality of edge rushers that you're playing against. Obviously, protecting Lamar's blind side is a much bigger deal than not protecting his blind side, but I still think that's probably like one of the most fascinating pivot points of where this offseason can go.
Yeah, that's going to be a dominant topic from the moment the Ravens either win the Super Bowl or get eliminated until the start of the offseason in bulk, because it's going to be fascinating to see what they do with Ronnie Stanley. Also, do need to mention that Zay Flowers is the first Ravens wide receiver ever to make the Pro Bowl. Topped 1,000 yards last week, 16th most receiving yards in the NFL. Finally, the curse has been broken, Jonas. The Ravens have drafted and developed a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Can you believe it?
Now, can the Orioles go out and sign a blue chip pitcher?
Nope. Who would have thought that the Ravens would have a Pro Bowl wide receiver before the Orioles would hand a multi-year contract to a starting pitcher, or really anybody? Tyler O'Neill can get out of his deal after 2025 if he wants to. All right, Jonas, let's talk about the playoffs, because the math is simple for the Ravens if they want to win the division for the second straight year. It's win and you take the AFC North. If they beat the Browns on Saturday, they not only take the division championship, but they are locked into the number 3 seed. Gets a whole lot more difficult if they lose. They can still get the division crown if they lose and Pittsburgh loses to Cincinnati at 8 o'clock on Saturday. But if the Ravens lose to the Browns and the Steelers win, then the Ravens are not division champs. Division goes to the Steelers, and the Ravens get the 5th seed, which means they go on the road to face Houston in the first round. We all saw how that went the first time, so you'd like the Ravens' chances, but still, it would say not good things about this team if they can't beat the very, very downtrodden Browns tomorrow.
In a vacuum, if you were the Ravens, would you rather face the Bills in the divisional round or the Chiefs in the divisional round?
Both games are going on the road. Both games are probably going to be in frigid environments. To me, it's 50-50. I'm not sure. I mean, I think you probably would rather face the Chiefs because they appear to be, the less frightening of those two teams. The offense is still not up to snuff, but you also have the baggage of the Chiefs having knocked you out last year. You have the fact that Steve Spagnuolo just a year ago, put Lamar Jackson in hell, and the fact that the Chiefs beat the Ravens in Arrowhead in week 1 of the season. So I would say you probably rather face the Chiefs, but that feels like a doomed, matchup to start with.
Yeah, I was initially leaning Kansas City for a lot of the same reasons that you outlined, but then, you think back, I know it's kind of apples to oranges, but Andy Reid, coming off coming off a bye in the regular season, that his record with the Chiefs is incredible, and it's basically would be the same kind of advantage that would go to him because of this time off. Jalen Watson, who is their top cornerback outside of Trent McDuffie, is reportedly being designated to return off injured reserve. So I don't know if that means that he would be he would have been available next week, if he will be for sure available the week after. But obviously, the longer of a wind-up period for him, the better that Chiefs defense will be. So, I guess I'm a little conflicted because this Bills defense is not as good as we thought it would be. I think it still can be a pretty good unit, but it's kind of been dragged down over the past month or so by just some pretty dreadful performances. So I think the Ravens are in a kind of weird win-win situation where like either that they're getting that number 3 seed, getting a home playoff game, or they're going on the road, which no one wants to do. Certainly not me, certainly not us Ravens media, and playing a Texans team that they'll probably be 9 or 10 point favorites
Right.
against, even on the road. So obviously, if things work out for the Ravens in that first wild card round, they're not only winning, but they're having whoever the 7 seed is knocking off the Bills, which means that the Ravens would get another home playoff game in that divisional round. But that's looking way too far ahead.
Looking in the near term, assuming the Ravens win tomorrow and they get that 3 seed, then they would be playing the 6 seed because it would be 4-5, 3-6. And the 6th seed would be either the Chargers or the Steelers. And if the Steelers win, they take care of business against the Bengals Saturday night, then the Steelers are the 6th seed, which means the Ravens are once again hosting the Steelers, the third time for this matchup. But it could also be the Chargers if the Steelers lose to the Bengals Saturday night and the Chargers beat the Raiders. So we've asked this question on this podcast before, but Jonas, who would you rather face in the first round at home if the Ravens are division champs, Steelers or the Chargers?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I think as of right now, probably the Chargers, but I just don't know. I mean, it's been so tough to judge what Pittsburgh is over the past 3 weeks or so because they played three of the best teams in the NFL. They got handled by the Eagles, they got handled by the Ravens for the most part, and they got handled by the Chiefs. And that Chiefs game was in Pittsburgh. So there's certain guys on that roster who you're not really sure where they are health wise. Looks like George Pickens is back practicing. Doesn't look like he has fixed his chemistry problems with Russell Wilson. There was a kind of awkward clip of him haranguing a Steelers reporter for suggesting that he and Russ weren't on the same page when that was what Russell Wilson had said to the same reporter. So the vibes in Pittsburgh definitely aren't great. And then you look at what's going on in LA, and they just lost Elijah Molden, who was a nice starter for them in that secondary. Ladd McConkey showed up on the injury report Wednesday with a toe injury. I forgot to check up and see whether he was available to practice yesterday. But anytime you see a wide receiver, or pretty much anyone in the NFL, pop up with a toe injury, you kind of hold your breath because a lot of time it's turf toe, and that's a really, really tough injury to play on or to play through. And besides Ladd McConkey, that Chargers offense does not really have a whole lot of juice. So it's tough to say. I mean, I think probably the Chargers coming into Baltimore with that light front, considering where this Ravens rushing attack is, considering just how loud it's going to be for Justin Herbert and that Chargers attack, I think you would probably feel a little bit better about taking on LA, but the margins are so small, and the whole complexion of that matchup could change depending on guys getting hurt, guys looking poorly, guys looking bad, guys looking good. So much stuff will happen on Saturday.
Yeah, let's get to the game tomorrow because that's what's in front of the Ravens right now. A game in which the Ravens are favored by 20. That is not only the biggest spread in the NFL this season, but it is the largest spread in Ravens history. Jonas, what would you do if the Ravens lost this game straight up? I mean, would you see Kraven the Hunter in IMAX, like back to back?
I would see Wicked. That's what I would do.
Wow, is that a punishment for you? You have no respect for musical theater or the talents of Ariana Grande.
Paul, what I was thinking was, because this spread is so large, what percent of plays would you say that the Ravens would have to play with only 10 players on the field for this spread to be an even spread? What would it take for this to be a pick 'em game?
I mean, 10 players on the field.
That's offense, defense, and special teams.
10 players on the field.
What
I would say at least, I'd say 40% for this to be a pick. I mean, 10 players on the field, Jonas. You're thinking a wide receiver is going to be open every single time when the Browns are on offense. And on defense, I mean, you're not going to be able to get anything going.
Even on special teams, it would be a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what player. Can the coaches pick which player doesn't play on the field? Like, if does John Harbaugh have a full week to prepare, and he says, "All right, we're only going out there with 10 players."
Yeah, I mean, I think that was that's basically the expectation. I was thinking like 25-30%, just because, again, I think it eventually would roll up. But I mean, as we're gonna talk about the respective healths of the respective injury situations of these teams, the Ravens are just have it so much better than Cleveland. It's just night and day different in terms of what they have available and what Cleveland definitely will not have.
I'll tell you, the most impressive highlight tape of all time. Some say it's Tavon Austin at West Virginia. I say it's Colin Sexton playing at Alabama when it was 3-on-5, where several guys on his team
I watched that game.
Got kicked out of the game, and he, for like the last 8 minutes of the game, they were literally playing 3-on-5, and his Alabama team, I think he played for Alabama, right? they actually held their own and like only lost by like 2 or 4 points. It was utterly absurd. That's just like that's the ultimate test of skill there. All right, let's talk about the injuries coming into this game, because the Browns come in banged up, to say the least, and in utter disarray, to say the most. They are going with Bailey Zappi at quarterback because of the myriad injuries that they've suffered at quarterback. According to Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com, Bailey Zappi is going to be the 40th quarterback to start for the Browns since 1999. I think it's safe to say, Jonas, whether it was Bailey Zappi, whether it was Dorian Thompson-Robinson, whether it was Jameis Winston, although Jameis Winston did throw for 340 yards against this team 10 weeks ago, you felt good about the Ravens' chances going into this game, and you feel a whole lot better considering it's going to be a guy who is making his first ever start for the Browns.
Yeah, and the last time that he played, he averaged like under 3 yards per attempt, which is not great, but it's still a little bit better than, or it's not, it's still a little bit worse than Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was, I think, at 3.5 yards per attempt against the Dolphins in his last start on Sunday. So this is just a comically bad quarterback situation. I mean, I wrote it in our preview that went up this morning that I think we're now up to, I think the Ravens have faced like 20 different Browns starters since 2000, according to True Media, and it would be hard to find a worse quarterback situation than this, because like we're basically talking about a four stringer again that the Ravens are going to have to face, and that's like the second four stringer in 4 weeks, right? If you count, who was it, Tim Boyle, for making it onto the field for the Giants, because DeVito was the third stringer, and they missed out on Drew Lock for the Giants. So this line surprisingly is not the biggest in NFL history. I think there was like a 28-point spread a few years back, but this game, if it's close, like at any point in the second quarter, I will be shocked.
I mean, this is the worst offense in the NFL, and that's with the cavalcade of quarterbacks that they've had out there. 32nd in DVOA on offense, 32nd in passing, 29th in rushing. They have no Deshaun Watson, no Jameis Winston, no Nick Chubb, no Cedric Tillman, no Jedrick Wills, no DeJuan Jones, no David Njoku, no Jerome Ford, no Pierre Strong. This team is in the utter pits of despair when it comes to injuries. And frankly, they're incentivized to lose this game, because if they lose, they have a greater chance of getting a higher pick. And frankly, the next time these two teams meet, we could be seeing Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders starting at quarterback, because they are slated, I think, to have the second overall pick right now, according to Tankathon.com. So this team is going to be probably, even though they will have not Jameis Winston, even though they'll have Deshaun Watson back for another season, they're probably going to be quarterback hunting again next year.
Yeah, and it's not a bad situation to step into. I mean, this offensive line is old. It's definitely been banged up. There's Joel Bitonio, who's been an anchor in the middle there for so long, is thinking of retiring. But we saw what Jerry Jeudy could do. He's a Pro Bowl selection. We know David Njoku can be a fun piece. I think we're probably looking at the beginning of the end for Nick Chubb, considering what he has put his body through. First the horrible knee injury, and now I think he's out with a broken foot. But Stefanski, when he's had competent quarterback plays, has been able to put together pretty good offenses. You think back to what Jacoby Brissett was able to do with this Browns offense before Deshaun Watson was eligible to come back from the suspension, and that team was could do some things. So I don't think this offense will be able to do anything against the Ravens right now, because of where the Ravens are and because of just how pitiful the options outside of Jerry Jeudy are. And obviously the quarterback play is probably going to be one of the worst in the league. I think Bailey Zappi in that start against the Jets, who had a very, very nice defense last year, he had like a 1.9 QBR or something, which is just hysterically low. So it's probably going to be a bloodbath. I mean, I don't know where you would set the over under for total yards in a game like this, considering the Ravens backups might be in as early as the middle of the third quarter. But I mean, it could be as low as like 205 yards, maybe under 200. It's if the Ravens hold another team, a second straight team out of the end zone, it would not shock me in the
And I
least.
know a lot of people are thinking you just had this conversation 10 weeks ago to preview the Browns, and the Browns came out and beat the Ravens in Cleveland. I mean, a lot of the things that we were saying now, we said back then. I think the video or the title of that podcast was "The Cleveland Browns Are an Abject Disaster." And they were then, but they are even more so now. I mean, they are a more injured, worse team right now that has absolutely no chance of competing. I think Jameis Winston gave them some kind of fun wild card trickeration that they could, I mean, he's going to go out there and just hurl the ball all over the yard. I don't think Bailey Zappi's going to do that. Jameis Winston's a very high variance quarterback. We've seen it in his career, and everything was clicking for him that day. And also consider this Ravens defense was completely different than it is now. I mean, you had Trenton Simpson starting at inside linebacker. Eddie Jackson started at safety for that game. We may recall that was when they were benching Marcus Williams and giving Eddie Jackson a shot, and it did not go particularly well. Jameis threw for 334 yards. I mean, Brent Urban, Michael Pierce got hurt up front in the middle of that game. And then there was just a series of bad luck that hit the Ravens as well. Obviously, the dropped interception that Kyle Hamilton had at the end of the game, that really was the chance for the Ravens to seal it, and they blew it. Justin Tucker missing all those field goals. He appears to have righted the ship. So in every possible way, this feels like a much different team, this much different Ravens team and a much different Browns team than the two that met 10 weeks ago.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention the personnel deficiencies that the Ravens had out wide. No Marlon Humphrey. He was coming off an ankle injury. Nate Wiggins got sick before the game, so he didn't make the trip. And the Ravens were by far the worst team in those high leverage spots. They were 2 for 10 on third down because they just could not get a whole lot with the ground game working. And when you were stuck behind what was then a kind of shaky offensive line against Myles Garrett, it's gonna be tough sledding, especially with some of the secondary talent that Cleveland had at that point. And the Browns, meanwhile, on offense went 8 for 15 on third down, and a lot of those were just very short, manageable throws for Jameis that they were able to make work against a not totally functional Ravens defense, and Ravens defense that was about to kind of be processed and basically turned upside down by everything we saw that would come in the following weeks with Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington and Marcus Williams and obviously Eddie Jackson being cut. So two very, very different teams now, week 18 compared to week 8.
Yeah. On offense for the Ravens in this game, this is a final opportunity for Lamar to pad his stats and to make his final case for MVP, which appears to have shifted, maybe not decidedly, but shifted. The momentum appears to have shifted once again behind Josh Allen. Do you think that Lamar Jackson will be able to, in this game, produce a high enough passer rating to break Aaron Rodgers' single season passer rating record?
It'll be tough. There's this misinformation out there that what he needs is a specific number for passer rating, and then that would take his his season long passer rating right now, which is 121.6 above Rodgers, which is 122.5, which he set in 2011 with the Packers. But that's not true because it's like an aggregate calculation. So if let's say he started the game by going 1 for 1 for a 21-yard touchdown or a 20-yard touchdown, like that in itself is a 158.3 passer rating. But if you put it together with the whole body of work of his season, it doesn't jump up to 122.5. Right. You need more completions, you need more touchdowns, you need more yardage. On our Ravens record kind of preview thing that went up yesterday that I did with Gianna, I did a couple listings of what it takes for Lamar to get there. And it's basically kind of what we've seen from him in some of these best games, which is not throwing a pick, having a relatively high touchdown rate, having a pretty good accuracy, typically above 70%, and then being explosive with the completions that you do get. So it's not a situation where he can afford to be conservative and expect that this game will, or that this passer rating record will be his. He's going to need to kind of push it. He's going to definitely need to score. He's definitely going to have to avoid interceptions, but it's definitely doable because this Browns defense, just like the offense is really missing some important pieces.
No Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, no Greg Newsome, no Shelby Harris, no Denzel Ward. Just an absurd list of injuries on the defensive side for the Browns as well. And from a coaching perspective in this game, Jonas, the Ravens obviously will not have a bye. A lot of other teams, though, are locked into their seed coming into week 18, and they have an opportunity to rest a lot of their starters. The Ravens aren't in that situation. They need to win this game in order to lock up the division, which is kind of why I almost wish that the Steelers game was being played first, so that if the Steelers lost, the Ravens could, if they were playing the 8:00 game, these two games were switched, then the Ravens could decide we're resting all of our starters. Division's already locked up. However, the Ravens need this game. Are you being extra cautious about the starters, about Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in particular? Because one, the opponent is so poor, and two, you don't get a bye. So you're immediately, hopping back on hopefully at home, not on the road, but hopping back into a playoff game against a tough opponent like the Steelers or the Chargers. Let's say the Ravens are up 2 scores at halftime. You're still rolling with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry to start the second half, and how much leash are you giving them, considering the opposing side has Bailey Zappi and is not likely to overcome a multi-score deficit?
Yeah, man, I don't think we've seen Lamar get taken out of a game before the fourth quarter, but I don't think we also haven't seen the Ravens go into a game as 20-point favorites. So the calculus on this one might be a little bit different. In terms of game plan, I mean, if I'm the Ravens, I'm just hoping that I can get away with like 90% runs and play action. Like I would be hopeful that Lamar wouldn't ever have to basically do more than like one true drop back per series, because the run game is so effective and the play action passing game off of that, which is usually a lot more safe for Lamar to drop back in the pocket and throw. You just hope that you're able to basically.
And Jonas has disappeared, unfortunately, but he's come right back. Jonas, you were saying?
Oh, sorry. Did I cut out?
You cut out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, where did you lose me?
You were talking about how you want to be able to ground and pound, because hopefully the between running the ball, between play action passes, you can generate enough offense that you won't need Lamar Jackson to drop back 40 times a game. There you go. I said it for you.
Myles Garrett was talking, I think, yesterday about how it's been really tough to get a clean hit on Lamar this season, and Myles Garrett is not anywhere close to the kind of, he's still an unbelievable player, but he's playing through some pain himself, and I think the Ravens should probably feel better about their chances of containing him now than they did in Week 8, and he didn't really do a whole lot stat wise in that first meeting, even though he was obviously he made his presence felt. So you want to keep him out of harm's way for Myles Garrett, and I think you should feel pretty good about that. You just don't want a guy that big, that fast, that strong, getting a clear run at your quarterback, especially this close to the playoffs. So, they're probably going to chip him. They're definitely going to, double team him a couple times with running backs or with tight ends. Just do whatever they can to take the sting out of that Cleveland pass rush, because another thing that the Browns don't have going for them is that Week 8 game was one of the last ones that they had Zadarius Smith before they traded him to the Vikings. So this feels a lot like, in terms of how it matches up, the Ravens versus the Giants a couple weeks ago, where it's just so many guys in that secondary, so many guys at the front are unavailable or are hurting, and the Ravens, even if nothing is working for them on, in structure, passing plays, you just feel like Lamar's going to have all day in the pocket to scramble around, make things happen, because there's just not a whole lot of juice up front outside of Myles Garrett.
What is going to be the higher total? Lamar Jackson total touchdowns or minutes that the Browns are featured on Hard Knocks in their final episode? I mean, they were in it for it felt like a minute and a half in the last episode. I just kept waiting for them to get to the Browns, and they just pretty much ignored them.
Well, they're gonna have to be in this out of necessity, because the Ravens are going to be in this.
Yeah, right? The Ravens are going to be the focal point, though.
Yeah.
I mean, do the cameras even show up to Cleveland? Like, do they even have to be there this week?
it's a good question. I don't think we'll see a lot of those face-to-face head-on, interviews that we've seen from the Ravens and from the Bengals and from the Steelers. But this is going to be an interesting game. I think first off, before I talk about Derrick Henry, what do you think would be more impressive to potential MVP voters? Lamar breaking the single season passer rating record, or Lamar, who's like 150 yards or so from 1,000 rushing yards, and I think 50 passing yards, excuse me, from 4,000 passing yards, a 4K, 1K season. Which do you think would be more impressive for you personally?
4K, 1K, because I think that is just a cleaner stat. It's like in baseball, like Shohei Ohtani having the first 50-50 season. It's something that you can point to. It's not an unbreakable record, but it's hard to fathom a quarterback in the NFL or somebody who's coming into the NFL in the next 5 or 10 years breaking that mark. 4K, 1K. I mean, and what he would have to do Sunday, like you said, he needs about 150 rushing yards. So he would have to go absolutely bananas on the ground in order to top that. So to me, that would be more impressive. And to me, I also think a lot of people don't really know who has, if you were to ask the average fan who holds the record for highest passer rating in a single season, I think most people would not know that it's Aaron Rodgers. They might say Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or something. So to me, it would be the 4K, 1K, because that's an absurd threshold to break.
And yet, I think Kyler Murray, during that season where the Cardinals started off like 8-0, 9-0, whatever that was, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, whenever, what exactly that season was, I think Kyler was on a 4,000, 1,000 pace. So,
but how close did he actually
he's obviously, I don't know. I don't think that close, because I think he got hurt pretty late in the year, and I think that might have been the year where he tore his ACL late, so he never actually got a chance to kind of finish off the deal. But over a 17-game season, you'd need about 58 rushing yards per game to get to 1,000, which is obviously a pretty significant chunk. But there are so many quarterbacks either now in the league or coming into the league who, you could probably chalk up, 40, 30 rushing yards a game just because of their scrambling ability, because of their design run ability. I mean, Jaden Daniels is, leading the NFL, I think, right now among quarterbacks in rushing yards per game. So it's not that crazy to imagine someone else being able to approach 4,000, 1,000. I mean, I think, just with how often we see quarterbacks entrusted with the ball and just how many plays there are per game, it feels like Lamar won't be the only one, or wouldn't be the only one, to get 4,000, 1,000 in a season if he is indeed the first one to do it. Meanwhile, passer rating is kind of a big deal, because you're talking about the volume of passing yards, you're talking about the volume of passing TDs, and you're doing all that while also limiting, incompletions and interceptions. And, Aaron Rodgers, that 2011 season was incredible for all those reasons. And it's just, to me, that seems like the harder one to break if you were to ask and so for me, I think that would probably be the more impressive thing, just if you're putting up on like an NFL tweet,
I think
which is going to win more of the Joe vote, the Joe fan vote. I think that would be it for me.
I think it would be the average Joe would go for the 4K, 1K. I think people who pay more attention and are more stat nerds like you and I would pay more attention to the passer rating. Also, I mean, it just speaks to Lamar breaking that record, would just speak to how ridiculous he is as a passer, which the fact that he still continues to get, criticism from corners of the internet about his passing ability, and he is on the verge of holding the record for passer rating, which is a flawed stat, I get, but it just is utterly absurd. Kyler Murray, by the way, in his second season, 2020, finished with 3,971 passing yards and 819 rushing yards. So kind of a similar...
In how many games?
16 games. So kind of similar tent poles to the ones that Lamar hit last year, because Lamar also came close last year, but fell short. All right, Jonas, give me a score prediction for this game.
Before I do, let me talk about Derrick Henry for a quick
Talk
sec.
about Derrick Henry.
I feel like I'm the only person in Ravens media who's bringing this up, but which is kind of surprising because fans love beef like more than they love the actual games. But Derrick Henry didn't have a great game against Cleveland in that first encounter. He had 11 carries for 73 yards, but a lot of that was just on a 39-yarder in the second quarter. He got jacked up by Grant Delpit, the Brown safety, in one of those on one of those runs, and then Grant Delpit hit Derrick Henry with the too small, just adding insult to injury. And I guess Grant Delpit has a thing where after wins, he posts on Instagram just a series of photos from the game, which is funny because the Browns haven't done a whole lot of winning this year, so there aren't a whole lot of photo montages. But one of the first of all, the caption that he had from that Ravens game was, quote, "They raven from a distance. We call that bird watching. Like I'm Kodak Black. We ain't doing no flocking." And with the help of your roommate, Sam, our mutual Ravens beat friend,
Sam
we were
Kerrigan
able
of the
to
Baltimore
determine that was an original bar. That was not something lifted from, as far as we could tell, another rapper, which is pretty impressive. The wordsmith, the skills to come up with that. Obviously, Kodak is a Ravens fan. He's long-term friends with Lamar. But I bring that up because I think on the second or third photo of that montage, there's the photo of him laying that big hit on Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry went to Alabama. Grant Delpit went to LSU. Not a lot of love lost there between those guys, even though they didn't play at the same time. And Derrick Henry does not follow Grant Delpit on Instagram, so keep that in mind keep that context in mind with what I'm about to report. He commented on that post, "Bet," as in, I get it. So I think we didn't talk to Derrick Henry this week because God knows why, but that tells me that even if Derek were to say that this game does not have any kind of personal meaning for him, it kind of sort of does. And it also, to me, raises the broader question, Paul. Have you ever commented on someone's Instagram who you're not following or friendly with?
No, I can't think of an instance where I would do that. I mean, I have as through the brand account, through Baltimore Banner Sports, at times when people either use our photos and don't credit us, or we just feel the need to hop in a comment section. But no, I mean, I think that's and it's not like Grant Delpit tagged Derrick Henry in the post, so I wonder if somebody sent it to him, how exactly he found that post from, or maybe he was following Grant Delpit, then Grant Delpit sent post that that beef, and Derrick Henry unfollows him, perhaps.
It's very true. Yeah, I'm no longer a straighter commenter after my series of salvos with Sydney Sweeney just fell on completely deaf ears. But there's more fish in the sea.
Yeah, definitely don't let the FBI know that that you are the person who's been constantly commenting.
The FBI?
I don't know. The restraining order is in place, Jonas. Give me your score prediction for this game.
I went with Ravens 30, Browns 6. Would it shock me if Cleveland scored a touchdown? No, absolutely not, because we just don't know what this Ravens defense would look like with a bunch of reserves in, which I think we will definitely see at some point. I think the Ravens, even if they take a while to get going, I just don't think that we'll see a lot of drives from this Cleveland offense that get past midfield. If we do, I think that will be a pretty big warning sign going into playoffs. I mean, one of the red flags from that Giants game, which they were able to, I think, pretty effectively address over the next couple of weeks, was just like how often that Giants offense was able to actually put together relatively sustainable drives, or relatively sustained drives, even if they didn't, end in the end zone as often as the Giants would have liked. So I think if you're the Ravens, you gotta, who you have to worry about. That it's going to be just a total fright fest for Bailey Zappi and or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, whoever's getting the ball back there, depending on whatever the game script is. If it's Zappi, he's not going to be as mobile. If it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he's probably not going to be as accurate. I just think that, if the Ravens, you're probably feeling like as good as you will in any game this year about possibly coming out of this game with like a defensive touchdown, because either someone's going to be holding onto the ball too long and it's going to lead to a strip sack and then a fumble recovery touchdown, or you're just going to have Zach Orr showing Bailey Zappi something he's never seen before, and Bailey just throwing into a window that he thinks is open, and boom, there's Roquan Smith or there's Kyle Hamilton, and they're running 50, 60 yards back the other way. So I just don't know if there's an aspect on this field, or if there's a matchup on this field, offense, defense, special teams, coaching, health, intangibles, where you could really say that Cleveland has the upper hand. And this should be as comfortable a win as the Ravens have all year.
Yeah, we talked about that line being massive, and yet we're both picking the Ravens to cover, because I'm picking the Ravens to win 31-3. It should be a bloodbath. I like like what you said, Jonas, about a defensive touchdown. I think that's highly possible, highly likely, and maybe the Browns, have a nice sustained drive in the fourth quarter against the Ravens reserves, and they come down the field and score a touchdown to make it 31-10. I don't know, but I just can't imagine that this iteration of this Ravens team with something to play for, and the Browns with absolutely nothing to play for, that the Ravens will let this one slip or even be close. Well, let us know what you think of how this game is going to go. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Write us a nice review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show. Whether I'm going to be healthy enough to be in person for the game or not, we shall see. I've got some antibiotics. Let's hope that they kick in the next 24 hours. In the meantime, though, follow Jonas at Jonas_Shaffer. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Like, rate, review, subscribe, and subscribe to the Baltimore Banner. $1 for 6 months to read all of Jonas's great work, and Gianna Hahn and Kyle Goon have got you covered for tomorrow's game between the Ravens and the Browns. Regular season finale. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul